Prince Siddhartha, the story of Buddha. A fortunate birth. Many, many years ago, in a small kingdom in the north of India, something was happening that would change the whole world. Queen Maya, wife of the good king SIDDHARTHA, lay asleep and had a wondrous dream. She dreamt she saw a brilliant white light shining down to her from the sky, and in the rays of this light was a magnificent elephant. It was pure white and had 6 large tusks. This elephant of light flew closer and closer to the queen, and finally melted into her body. Queen Maya awoke, filled with greater happiness than she had ever felt before. Quickly she went to the king, and together they asked the wise men at the court what this strange and wonderful dream might mean. The wise men answered, "Oh, your majesties, this dream is a most excellent one. It means the queen will give birth to a son, and this prince will someday become a great man. Not only you, but the entire world is fortunate that the queen will have such a special child." Hearing this good news, the king and queen were overjoyed. The king was especially happy because he longed for a son who would someday rule the kingdom in his place, and now it seemed his wish was being granted. It was the custom in those days for a woman to return to her parents' home in order to give birth. And so, when the time had almost come for the baby to be born, Queen Maya and many of her friends and attendants left the palace of the king and began the journey to her childhood home. They had not traveled far when the queen asked that they stop and rest. She knew the baby would be born very soon. They reached the beautiful gardens of Lumbini, and the queen went into this garden looking for a comfortable place in which she could give birth. The stories say that even the animals and plants, somehow understanding what a special child was about to be born, wanted to help. A large tree bent down one of its branches, and the queen took hold of it in her right hand. Supporting herself in this way, she gave birth to a son. The attendants cradled the baby in their arms and were amazed at how beautiful he was and how peaceful he seemed. At that moment, throughout the land, there was a great feeling and felt great love and friendship for one another. Some people saw rainbows suddenly appear in the sky, and many other beautiful and unusual lights were seen. A holy man's visit. With great rejoicing, King Suddhodana greeted his queen and his new son. Splendid festivals were held, and the whole kingdom was decked in beautiful colored banners. It was a time of great happiness and peace. There was so much gladness everywhere that his parents decided to name Prince Siddhartha, which means the one who has brought about all good. Now the wise men made new predictions about the baby. "O king," they said, "the signs of the prince's birth are most favorable. Your son will grow up to be even greater than you are now." SIDDHARTHA was a hermit who lived by himself in the distant forests, and he was known to be a very holy person. The king and queen were surprised that SIDDHARTHA would leave his forest home and appear at their court. "We are very honored that you have come to visit us, O holy teacher," they said with great respect. "Please tell us the purpose of your journey, and we shall serve you in any way we can." SIDDHARTHA answered them, "I thank you for your kind welcome. I have come a great distance to visit you, because of the wonderful signs I have recently seen. They tell me that the son recently born to you will gain great spiritual knowledge for the benefit of all people. Since I have spent my entire life trying to gain such holy wisdom, I came here as quickly as possible to see him for myself." The king was very excited and hurried to where the baby prince lay sleeping. He carefully picked up his son and brought him back to SIDDHARTHA. For a long time the holy man gazed at the infant, saying nothing. Finally he stepped back, looked sadly up at the sky, sighed heavily, and began to cry. Seeing SIDDHARTHA weep, the king and queen became very frightened. They were afraid that the holy man had seen something wrong with their child. With tears in his eyes, the king fell to his knees and cried out, "O holy teacher, what have you seen that makes you weep? Didn't you and all the other wise men say that my son was born to be a great man, to gain supreme knowledge? But now, when you look at my baby, you cry. Does this mean that the prince will die soon? Or will something else very terrible happen to him? He is my only child, and I love him dearly. Please tell me quickly what you have seen, for my heart is shaking with sadness and fear." Then, with a very kind look, Asita calmed the new parents and told them not to worry. "Do not be upset," he told them. "I am not crying because of something bad I saw for the prince. In fact, now that I have seen your son, I know for certain that he will grow up to be more than just a great man. There are special signs that I have seen on this child, such as the light that shines from his fingers, that tell me that he will have a glorious future. If your son decides to stay with you and become a king, he will be the greatest king in history. He will rule a vast realm and bring his people much peace and happiness. But if he decides not to become a king, his future will be even greater. He will become a great teacher, showing all people how to live with peace and love in their hearts. Seeing the sadness in the world, he will leave your palace and discover a way to end all suffering. Then he will teach this way to whoever will listen." "No, dear king and queen, I was not crying for the child. I was crying for myself. You see, I have spent my whole life looking for the truth, searching for a way to end all suffering. And today I have met the child who will someday teach everything I have wanted to learn. But by the time he is old enough to teach, I shall already have died. Thus I shall not be able to learn from him in this life. That is why I am so sad. But you, O fortunate parents, should not be sad. Rejoice that you have such a wonderful child." The kind prince. While the new baby was still very young, his mother, Queen Maya, died. Shortly before she passed away, the queen said to her sister, "Soon I shall not be able to take care of my baby any more. Dear sister, after I have gone, please look after SIDDHARTHA for me." Her sister promised that she would. She loved the little prince very much, and brought him up as if he were her own child. The prince grew into a bright, handsome, kind-hearted boy. His father, the king, arranged for him to be educated by the best teachers in the kingdom, and very quickly he showed his remarkable intelligence. After the first few days of classes, the teachers reported to the king. "Your Majesty," they said, "the prince does not need us any more. After only a few lessons, he has learned everything we have to teach him. In fact, he has taught us a few things that we ourselves never knew before." Hearing this, the king's pride in his son grew even greater. "With his intelligence, my son will certainly grow up to be a wise and powerful king," he thought, and this made the king very happy. As the prince grew older, his kindness made him well loved by everyone who knew him, but his father was worried. "SIDDHARTHA is too gentle and sensitive," he thought. "I want him to grow up to be a great king, and kings must be strong and powerful. But the prince is more interested in sitting by himself in the garden than he is learning how to be the ruler of a kingdom. I'm afraid that my son will soon want to leave the palace and follow the lonely life of holy men, like Asita. If he does this, he will never become a great king." These thoughts bothered the king very much. He sent for his most trusted ministers and asked them what he could do. Finally, one of them suggested, "O king, your son sits and dreams of other worlds only because he is not yet attached to anything in this world. Find him a wife, let him get married and have children, and soon he will stop dreaming and becoming interested in learning how to rule the kingdom." The king thought this was an excellent idea. So he arranged for a large banquet at the palace, and all the young women from noble families were invited. At the end of the evening, the prince was asked to give presents to. Finally, one young woman was left. She was Yasodhara, the daughter of a neighboring king. Unlike the others, she approached the prince without any shyness. For the first time that evening, the young prince looked directly at a woman before him. She was very beautiful, and the prince was immediately attracted to her. They stood in silence. The ministers saw all that happened, and excitedly ran to the king. "Sire," they reported happily, "we have found the perfect bride for the prince. She is Prince Yasodhara, daughter of your neighbor, King Suprabhuda. Let us immediately go to this king and arrange for the marriage of his daughter and your son." King Shuddhodana agreed, and soon afterward visited Yasodhara. An unexpected sight. When morning came, the charioteer Channa groomed the prince's favorite horse, Kantaka, and drove out through the palace gates with his royal passenger. When the charioteer were riding by, they spotted a bent, sad-looking person among the joyous crowd. Curious, for the prince had never seen anything like this before, he turned and asked, "Channa, who is that person over there? And why is he stooping over and not dancing like the others? Why is his face not smooth and shining like everyone else's? Why is it pale and wrinkled? Why is he so different from the others?" And Channa pointed to that man, who remained unseen by everyone else, and answered the prince, "Why, sir, that is just an old man." "Old?" the prince questioned. "Was this man always old like this before, or did it happen to him recently?" "Neither, O prince," Channa answered. "Many years ago, that wrinkled man before you was as young and strong as all the others you see here today, but slowly he lost his strength. His body became bent, the color faded from his cheeks, he lost most of his teeth, and now he appears the way he does." Surprised and saddened, Siddhartha asked again, "That poor man, is he the only one suffering the weakness of old age, or are there others like him?" "Surely you know, O prince, that everyone must experience old age. You, me, your wife Yasodhara, Rahula, everyone at the palace. We are all growing older every moment. Some day most of us will look like that man." These words so shocked the gentle prince that for a long time he remained speechless. The second journey. The king heard about his Kapilavastu. The streets were decorated as before, and the people were again happy to see their prince. But this time, seen only by Siddhartha and his charioteer, a vision of a sick person appeared in the crowd of laughing people. "Look, Channa," the prince called out. "Who is that man who coughs so violently, who shakes his body, and cries so pitifully?" "That is a sick person, O prince." "Why is he sick?" he asked. "People become sick for many reasons, sire. Perhaps he ate some bad food, or let himself become too cold. Now his body is out of balance and he feels feverish." "Do even happy people like those in the crowd ever become sick?" "Oh yes," answered the charioteer. "A person might be healthy one day and sick the next. No one is safe from illness." The final shock. Siddhartha and Channa again left the palace by chariot, and for the third time a vision appeared that only the prince and his charioteer could see. A group of sad-eyed people, carrying a long box in which a body was covered in a white sheet lay, appeared from one of the houses and slowly made its way down one of the side streets. "Channa, why is that man in the box lying so still? Is he asleep? And why are all those people crying? Where are they taking him?" "He is a dead man, sire. They are going to the river where they will burn his body." The prince was confused. "What do you mean by dead? And if they burn his body, will it not hurt him? Please, Channa, explain what you mean so I can understand." And so Channa explained, telling the prince the truths his father had tried to hide from him all these years. Fading pleasures. Everyone tried his or her best to amuse the prince. The dancing girls flirted with him, hoping to win at least a smile from his handsome but saddened face. Yet Siddhartha did not even seem to notice them. He could not get the visions of old age, sickness, and death out of his mind. One of the ministers, seeing that the prince was not enjoying any of the splendid arrangements that had been made for him, came over to the prince. In the joking manner of a friend, he said, "Siddhartha, it is not right that you ignore these lovely dancers and refuse to join the festivities. Come on, you're young and healthy. You should be enjoying yourself. What is the matter? Aren't these women pretty enough for you?" But the prince answered him in a voice as strong and low as thunder. "You have misunderstood me. I do not dislike the lovely people and the things I see here, but when I think of how quickly their beauty will disappear, how everything changes so fast, I cannot find much pleasure in them any more. If there was not old age, sickness, and death, then I too could find great pleasure in such lovely objects. But in the middle of such unhappiness, knowing what awaits us all in the future, how can I be satisfied with pleasures that will fade so quickly?" The prince sank deeper and deeper into gloom. He seemed to lose interest in everything. He hardly ate anything anymore, and as a result began to look pale and unhealthy. This time, Siddhartha saddled Kantaka himself and rode out of the palace grounds in search of some beautiful countryside. Finally he came to the edge of some farmland and dismounted. Siddhartha looked out over the farmland. A man and his oxen were plowing the field. The birds were singing and the sun was shining brightly. When Prince Siddhartha had finished this compassionate meditation, he opened his eyes. Standing before him, dressed like a poor beggar, was a man he had never seen before. His eyes were calm and bright, and he had the look of great peace on his face. "Please tell me," the prince asked, "who are you?" The man answered, "I am someone who has become frightened by the sufferings of the world. I have grown tired of the so-called pleasures to be found in the company of others. So now I wander about alone. I have given up my home and now live and sleep in caves, in the forest, or wherever I find myself. My only interest is finding the highest and most perfect happiness." When he had spoken these words, the man disappeared as if by magic, leaving the prince both astonished and overjoyed. "At last I have found the true purpose of my life," Siddhartha thought. "I too shall give up my home and begin my search for true happiness and the end of all suffering." Escape. He had only one thought, and that was to leave. That night after dinner a strange force seemed to enter the palace. One by one the musicians and the dancers and servants became drowsy and fell asleep. Finally even Yasodhara fell asleep next to her baby Rahula. Only Siddhartha remained awake. Now that he knew what he must do with his life, he would never again allow himself to fall under the spell of worldly comforts and distractions. Others might be content to sleep and dream, but he had more important work to do, and for that he had to be fully awake. Now was the perfect chance for the prince to escape. But before he left, he thought to himself, "I would like to hold my son in my arms before I depart. Since he was born, I have barely had the chance to touch him." Yet when he saw his wife and child lying together, he realized that there was no way for him to pick up Rahula without rousing Yasodhara. If she wakes up, he thought, it will be very difficult for me to leave. No, if I am to do what I must do, I should leave quickly and quietly while everyone is asleep. He went to where Channa, the charioteer, was sleeping, and gently woke him up. "Hurry, Channa, saddle my horse. I wish to ride tonight." Channa was surprised that the prince would want to go out in the middle of the night, but he did as he was asked. He saddled Kantaka and led him to the prince. Siddhartha patted his horse and whispered, "Kantaka, my friend, we must be very quiet. I don't want to wake up any of the guards. Tonight is a very special night." As the three of them approached the heavy gates at the edge of the gardens, the doors suddenly opened by themselves. Silently they rode out into the night. When they reached the edge of the city, the prince looked back and vowed to himself, "Until I learn how to conquer all sufferings, I shall not return to this fair city, Kapilavastu."